We got a great injury update on Ronald Acuña Jr. Plus, should Nick Allen versus Orlando Arcia be an actual position battle? Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today for Thursday, March 13th. Your source of news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on Twitter, Braves_today. We have a Facebook page and Instagram as well. And you can find all of my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. Tons of ways to support us. Obviously, subscribe to the YouTube channel, even if you're an audio listener, so that you can get the clips of the different media availabilities that Atlanta posts for us, whether it was Grant Holmes or Chris Sale talking about their outings, whether it's Brian Snitker talking about Jurickson Profar, when Alex Anthopoulos meets with the media. Go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel so you get those. And also, subscribing to the newsletter, either free or through a paid membership, supports what we're doing trying to cover the Atlanta Braves. And what I think is a little bit different way from how an established beat writer does it or some of the other common sites do. I'm going to get to Ian Anderson. He made a start yesterday. We need to talk about it. I'm going to get to this really good, positive Ronald Acuña Jr. injury update. But first, because we talked about him yesterday, and a lot of people reached out to me and asked, we need to talk about Nick Allen. Okay? I understand it's a risk leading off the show with what is projected to be your backup shortstop, right? That's not a very common topic. One of the rules in podcasting is have your biggest thing at the very front of the show. And Ronald Acuña Jr. would be the biggest thing at the very front of the show. But you guys are very engaged, right? You guys understand the strengths and weaknesses of this roster. And Orlando Arcia, let's not get this wrong, has been a weakness of this roster. Reminder, last year, he batted .218 with a .625 OPS. His on-base was .271. And Nick Allen came back yesterday, went 2 for 2 with a homer in his first game back in about a week, leading off playing shortstop. So let's have this conversation, right? Let's talk about the pros and cons of Orlando Arcia versus Nick Allen as the starting shortstop. Okay. And the first thing that I want to get to is the contrast in offensive styles between these guys, because there actually is one. I know that Orlando Arcia in offense makes a lot of people chuckle because they think his production's offensive, but he does have certain things that he can do offensively that are stuff that you don't get from Nick Allen. Okay. And at the same time, Nick Allen has things he does that you're probably not going to get from Orlando Arcia. So for Arcia, the big thing that he is giving you that Nick Allen doesn't is power upside. Okay. And by that, what I mean is the last 2 seasons, he's hit 17 home runs in both years. Those are actually tied for his career highs. His previous career high was 15 home runs when he was in Milwaukee in 2017 and 2018. So 17 home runs is his career high. Now, the way that Orlando Arcia does that is a little bit different. He's not getting great marks for average exit velocity. He's not getting great marks for barrels, for sweet launch angle, sweet spot, so hitting the ball at the optimal angle, for bat speed, for any of that stuff. Instead, and this is an area where he's gotten better since he's come to Atlanta, but Orlando Arcia does a good job, a above average in baseball job at pulling the ball in the air. The way to get power production when you don't have absurd exit velocities is to get out in front of the ball and pull it down the line in the air. We see this. There's a lot of players who have either gotten more out of their limited power or have been able to hold off Father Time a bit by leaning more into this, right? Example of that first category is Isaac Paredes. Was with the Rays, then the Cubs, now the Astros, which is the perfect landing spot for him because he's a right-handed hitter with relatively poor exit velocities, but he's one of the best in baseball at elevating the ball to the pull side. And so now he goes to a ballpark, Daikon Park in Houston. My co-host on First Pitch, Troy, calls it the Icebox, which is just hilarious because the company that Daikon's like a AC company, refrigeration company, something like that, where he pulls the ball in the air down the line. They have that short porch because of the Crawford boxes, right? So that's the first kind of area where he doesn't have great exit velocities, but he can make it work. And then Nolan Arenado is a kind of guy that as he's gotten older and the power has started to drop a little bit with age, he's leaned more into pulling the ball in the air, and he's still able to get some decent production despite not having top tier exit velocities. And Arcia is not as bad as Isaac Paredes, but he's in that same boat of his average exit velocity last year was 88.2 miles an hour. That is 29th percentile in baseball. In 2023, it's not like he took a drastic drop in that. He went from a 28th percentile, 88.2 miles an hour in 2023, to a 29th percentile, 88.2 miles an hour in 2024. He's exactly the same as far as the average exit velocity he's putting on these balls. But because he is, again, one of the better players in baseball at elevating the ball to the pull side, he gets decent power. And this is a skill that he has gotten better at since he came to Atlanta. This is one of the things the Braves taught him. Back when he was in Milwaukee, going over some of his percentages for pulling the ball in the air, 8.4%, 11.7, 9.5, 10.4. Once he came to Atlanta and entered the starting lineup on a regular basis, 18.1, 16.7, 19.3. He legitimately has gotten better at this. And because he's done, that's why Orlando Arcia is able to give, the threat of 20 home runs. He's never hit 20. Again, his high is 17. But he's able to threaten you with home runs. Nick Allen, by contrast, is not going to do that. Okay? I know he hit a home run yesterday. So the timing of me saying this is weird. He has 9 career home runs in 247 major league games. Let me break it down even farther here. In 581 batted ball events, that's what StatCast calls when you put a ball in play that's fair. In 581 batted ball events in Nick Allen's major league career, he has 7 barrels. You don't have to hit a barrel to get a home run, but it is very hard to get a home run without hitting a barrel. Because if you remember, a barrel is the combination of launch angle and exit velocity that is more likely than not going to end up as a home run. It's not a guarantee. You can hit a barrel and not get a home run, but it is more likely than not that you will with a barrel. He has 7 career barrels in 247 games and 581 balls in play. He's not giving you the power. The expected slugging for his career is actually even worse than his career average of 283. His expected slugging is 273. And on StatCast, expected slugging is just a combination of the inputs to the ball and what it projects your slugging should be based on hit direction, launch angle, velocity, all of that stuff. He's not giving you power. He's not giving you the threat of power. That's going to be one of those things, kind of like when you would see a pitcher hit a home run and his teammates would go nuts. That's what it's going to be with Nick Allen in games if Nick Allen's a starter. But he does give you a more reliable contact than what Orlando Arcia is giving you. His contact ability, I try to not look at just contact in general, because just contact in general can reward you for bad habits. If you chase out of the zone but you hit the ball, that increases your contact percentage, even though that might not be good quality contact. So what I like to look for is zone contact. How well do you make contact on pitches inside the strike zone? Okay. Nick Allen, for his career, 86.3% in the majors, zone contact. The MLB average is like 81, 82%. So he is better than average on this. And that is an area where he does better than Orlando Arcia, right? Orlando Arcia, for his career, is at 80.9% zone contact. Now, during his time in Atlanta, 22, 23, 24, now I'm kind of throwing out 21. He played a little bit, but not a lot. But anyway, in his time in Atlanta, Arcia has been right there around league average, 82.3% for 2 consecutive years. He's been around league average. But Nick Allen is going to more reliably make contact in the zone, put the ball in play, and require the defense to make a play. Nick Allen is also above average speed, so he's faster than Orlando Arcia. And he's less prone to swing and miss because, again, he's making higher contact in the zone. 18.8% whiff percentage is what Allen had last year. Caveat of that is it's a small sample size. You go to previous seasons, though, 19.1, 23.4. He's been in the high teens to low 20s. Orlando Arcia, by comparison, 26.6, 24.3, 27.3, right? Allen's going to give you more contact ability, but significantly less power. Arcia is going to be, if you think about it, a prototypical Braves hitter. He's going to give you power potential, but he's also going to swing and miss a lot. Allen has better speed than Arcia. The defense is interesting on these guys because both of them grade out pretty well defensively, but I would say that Orlando Arcia is more above average and Allen is more above average to potentially plus. I do think Allen's the better defender. Interesting conversation. Do you go with the floor? What feels like the floor? Statistically, he's not been very good in the majors, but what feels like the floor of a Nick Allen? Or do you go with the ceiling of Orlando Arcia? It's a very interesting conversation to try to figure out. In just a minute, let's talk about Ronald Acuña Jr. because we got a great injury update and we know exactly what he is and is not doing in his rehab. I'll get to that next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby talking about some of the news and notes from Braves spring training. And we got a great article from Ken Segura of the AJC about Ronald Acuña Jr. Justin Toscano, the beat writer for the Braves beat writer for the AJC, is now back down with the team. He probably will, I believe he's there all the way through the start of the season. He's not leaving again now. And so one of the last articles Ken put up came out on Wednesday, and it was all about Ronald Acuña Jr. It was about some of what he's done in spring. This story about Ronald Acuña Jr. just launching a monster home run in Cool Today Park. If you've been there, they have the scoreboard in left center. It's 40-something feet past the wall, and it's 40 feet high. And supposedly, there's no video of this, supposedly, Ronald launched a home run over the scoreboard this spring. But, and there's some great quotes in there of Snit talking about it and Olsen talking about it and things like that. Different guys on the squad talking about what they've seen out of Ronald. It's a really good article. Go check it out. AJC.com. I think it's /Braves or something like that. They do also have the season pass coming out soon too, so you should definitely subscribe to that. It gets you all the Braves content during the season. I think it starts in like a couple weeks here. But in the article as well, Ken was talking about some of the things that Ronald was doing in spring. He's not playing in major league games. We know that. But everything else that he's doing. And it starts off with some quotes from Eddie Perez is close to Ronald, right? They're both from Venezuela. They spend a lot of time together in the offseason and helping, like, Perez helps Ronald throughout the season and things like that. And Perez talked about how intense Ronald's workouts were after the 2022 season, entering 2023. And how Perez didn't predict an MVP, but he said, you're going to have an unbelievable year. And then Ronald won the MVP. And Perez has said that Ronald's doing a lot of that same stuff now and has been doing a lot of that same stuff this winter. But he's been going even harder, right? He's getting stronger. He's doing even more than he did in that offseason. And Ken detailed some of the things that Ronald is doing. We knew he was taking batting practice. We saw that on YouTube in the Behind the Braves, right? We saw that Ronald was in the cage taking BP. He's done both cage work. He's also done on-field batting practice. I talked about this the other day with a Spencer Strider injury update, that Ronald's done live BP versus Spencer Strider, right? Him and Ozzie Albies went out there, and I think combined in 9 at-bats, they drew like 1 walk and they punched out 3 or 4 times. Like Spencer Strider things, right? But also, we got from this article, we found out that Ronald is doing outfield drills with first base coach Tom Goodwin. He's not playing outfield, right? It's not a game setting where he's playing outfield, but he's doing outfield drills, whether it is tracking the ball off the bat, whether it is working on reads, routes, reactions, your first jump, all of that stuff. He's doing drills to help him reacclimate to play in the outfield. He's also out there shagging fly balls in batting practice, right? So it was yesterday morning, Wednesday morning, him, Austin Riley, Orlando Arcia, Ozzie Albies, all just hanging out there in center field and shagging fly balls. And there's a quote from Ozzie Albies on that. I don't know when he's going to play, but he's moving around great. He even broke to his left to go get a fly ball that was not online or whatever. He's not playing the outfield in a competitive environment, but he's doing the drills and he's shagging fly balls. He's also getting in some game action, but in a very limited and unusual capacity. So he's going to the minor league games on a backfield. Minor league camp is going right now. He's going to the backfields, and he's in those games as the designated hitter, but he doesn't get to run the bases. So once he hits the ball, I assume either there's no runner or somebody else runs to first for him. Like they're just hanging out behind the plate and they run to first for him. But he's seeing live pitching in a game environment. He just doesn't get to run the bases. All of this does sound like he is, as you would hope, farther along than he was in 2022. You'll remember in 2022, he came back too early. He was dealing with soreness in the knee. There was fluid buildup in the knee. He had to DH a bunch down the stretch. Like when he came back, he went full bore. He was trying to steal bases, do all of that stuff. And it was too much. And they had to back him off down the stretch. He had to DH a lot and things like that. It feels, one, he's farther along now than he was in 2022. It also feels like they're not only are they being more patient, but that he's okay with that. And in this article, Ken mentions the date that I've talked about, May 2nd at home against the Dodgers. If Ronald comes back for that game, that would be game number 32. So he would miss 31 games. He would get in 131 games, assuming he didn't need a day off after he came back. And the plan, the reason they're slow playing this, is they want him to not need a day off when he comes back. When he comes back, they want him to be back. I feel really good about where Ronald Acuña Jr. is and could be this season because it sounds like he's doing almost everything that is required to be an everyday player when he returns. Obviously, base running's that big thing that we've seen him doing sprints. We've seen him doing outfield drills. We haven't seen him doing the specific thing that got him hurt, changing direction rapidly on the base paths. That is the thing that got him hurt in Pittsburgh. He was leading off a second, and they went to pick him off, and he tried to break back to the bag, and that's when his ACL tore. But outside of that, he's doing everything else required. It's just a matter of putting it all together, right? He's doing the outfield drills, he's shagging fly balls, but he's not played the outfield yet, right? He's seen live pitching in a competitive environment, but he's not hit the ball and then run to first base. So I feel good about, one, where he is, and two, that date of May 2nd, about a month and a half away, it feels like that's doable. You can put these things together over the next couple weeks. You can get him a little bit of rehab stints between now and then, and he can be back by May 2nd. So I feel good about that. In just a minute, let's talk about Ian Anderson, because there's a realization about Ian Anderson that I think we all need to come to. I'll break that down next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today, final segment of the Thursday show, Thursday the 13th. It's Diet Spooky, right? And I think we all need to come to a realization here. Ian Anderson is going to be the fifth starter. Ian Anderson has done enough where they're going to put him in the opening day rotation. I know that a lot of people, and myself included, have discussed about can AJ Smith-Shawver take that fifth spot and all of that kind of stuff. Ian Anderson, outside of the walks, which are significant, we're not dismissing those, I'll get to that in a second, outside of the walks, has done enough for them to put him in the opening day rotation. Now, has he done enough to stay in the rotation all season? I don't know. But four games in spring for Ian Anderson, 12 innings pitched. He's allowed 4 hits. 3 of those were singles. One of those was a double, and it was yesterday against Baltimore, right? So he came into yesterday's 4-inning start with having only allowed 2 hits. 4 hits. By the way, that's a 103 batting average allowed. 4 hits, 3 runs, but 13 walks to 6 strikeouts. He's also hit a guy with a pitch. He's given out 14 free passes. One, this is the quintessential Ian Anderson, right? This is the Ian Anderson stat line of all Ian Anderson stat lines. More walks than strikeouts. He's never, to clarify, he's never been that bad in his career, right? But Ian Anderson's whip right now in spring is 1.42. In his best full season, which was 2021, when he had an ERA of 3.58 and went 9-5 in 24 starts, he had a whip of 12.31. Because his walk rate was, and I had that here, his walk rate was 9.9%. Obviously, his walk rate's a little higher. Now, his career walk rate's 10.4%. But, again, 9.9% in that year, it was 3.7 walks per 9 innings. And again, a whip of 1.23. And we all hate the walks, right? Like, the walks are annoying as hell, I'll be honest. Think about a dude having 13 walks in 12 innings and being an opening day starter frustrates me to no end. But more important than the walk rate is the whip. Because at the end of the day, 1, it doesn't matter how you get on base. You got on base. But 2, in some respects, a walk is better than a hit. If you're going to let a guy get on base, you'd rather walk him than let him put the ball in play. And I think that's going to be the approach of the team is, hey, the whip's not great. A 142 whip is not awesome. We'd rather it be lower. But 1, They're probably expecting it to be lower in the regular season when the games matter and the adrenaline's there. I'll point out, in 2021, in spring training, his whip was 158. He allowed, now, wasn't a lot of walks. It was 5 walks in 18 in the third innings, but he allowed 24 hits. So his walk was 158 in 2021. His ERA in spring, by the way, was 6.38 that year. And then he turned around and he cut that almost in half in the regular season. My assumption here for Atlanta is that they are going to assume the walks are a small sample size and that the walks will regress closer to his career numbers than what he's done in spring. I'm assuming that. The hard part is, can you also assume that the relatively few hits he's allowed, again, 3 singles and a double, can you also assume that's going to regress a bit? Or is that a skill he can hold? And the walks are small sample size and bad luck. Part of me thinks it's maybe a little of both. The walks are going to come back, but do I think he'll get it below 10% like he had in 21? I personally don't think he will. I don't think he's going to get below 10%. I think he's probably going to be hovering around that 2022 figure of 11%. And again, that's not an incredibly huge difference per 9 innings. It goes from 3.7 to 4.4. It's not a massive difference, right? But it does also maybe feel like some of the guys pounding the ball in the ground, forcing the ground balls, some of that, having watched him, feels a little bit sustainable. Now, it's sustainable now. When he is getting later in the year and his workload has gone from last year's 68 innings to 140, right? He has a jump of over 100% in his workload, assuming he's in the rotation all year. Is he still going to be able to keep the ball down and force those ground balls? Being a changeup dominant guy, that helps a little bit. But at the same time, the flip side of that is even guys who have arsenals that are geared towards generating ground balls, like a Bryce Elder, we saw down the stretch in 23, the fatigue meant he was leaving more balls up and he was getting crushed. I don't have an explanation for what happened to Bryce Elder last year. He shouldn't have been as fatigued and he was still leaving balls up and getting crushed. I don't know about that. But in 23, a lot of that directly translates into the fatigue, the accumulated workload. I think we all need to accept and understand that these 13 walks and a hit batter, I'm going to continue pointing out that free pass there. The 14 free passes in 12 innings. As frustrating as it is for us, that is not enough for this team to not put Ian Anderson on the opening day roster. If he had options, I think it'd be different. If he had options, this would be a scenario where if somebody else was just absolutely amazing, AJ Smith-Shawver, Elder, whoever else, and Ian Anderson had options but walked this many guys, would they potentially put Ian Anderson and Gwinnett to start the year? Yeah, I think they probably would. But that's not the boat that we're in. That's not the situation that we're in. He doesn't have options. Because he doesn't have options, and because he hasn't looked absolutely dreadful in spring, he's been pretty good at keeping runs off the board, and he's been pretty good about not allowing hits. I think he's going to be the 5th starter on opening day. Let me know what you think. Should Nick Allen versus Orlando Arcia be a thing? What's the better option to do with Ian Anderson other than this? I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. Show's on Twitter at Braves_today. You can email us, contact@bravestoday.com. In the meantime, you're listening on audio. Do us a favor, leave us a 5-star review. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell when we drop that next episode. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.